Welcome back to the Nepali Diaspora News Digest, your weekly roundup of notable news curated so you can easily stay up to date.
Whether you prefer reading or listening,
We've got you covered.
find all the articles we discuss along with our newsletter at nepalidiaspora.net.
I'm really looking forward to diving into this week's news.
Yeah.
Because we've got quite a spread, economic ups and downs, a cybersecurity wake-up call, even some archaeological intrigue.
It's fascinating how these seemingly disparate stories actually paint a vivid picture of what's happening in Nepal and the diaspora right now.
Exactly. So let's start with economy and development,
Sounds good?
where things are looking pretty good for investors on the Nepal Stock Exchange.
Oh.
The NDPSE index saw nearly a full percentage point jump this week.
For those who aren't familiar with NEPSE, it's basically the Nepali stock market. And this upward trend suggests growing investor confidence in the country's economic prospects.
That's definitely encouraging. And get this, 4 companies saw their share values surge by a whopping 10% in a single day. Upakar, Lakabita, Bhatia Sanstha, Limited Sickles, Hydropower Limited, 3-Star Hydropower Limited, and Janaki Finance Company Limited.
It's interesting to note that 3 of those companies are in the hydropower sector.
Yeah.
That aligns with Nepal's push for hydropower development, so investors may be anticipating further growth there.
Interesting. Speaking of energy, I think this next bit of news will resonate with a lot of our listeners. Fuel prices are up again.
Oh, no.
The Nepal Oil Corporation blames changes from their supplier in India, but ultimately it means we're all paying more at the pump.
This situation really highlights Nepal's vulnerability when it comes to fuel.
Yeah.
Relying on a single supplier makes the country susceptible to price fluctuations and potential disruptions.
So what are the alternatives? Is there anything Nepal can do to lessen its dependence on India for fuel?
It's a complex challenge that requires a multi-pronged approach. Exploring alternative energy sources like solar and wind power is crucial.
Yeah.
Diversifying suppliers beyond India is another step. And investing in more efficient transportation systems like electric vehicles could also make a difference.
Okay, let's move on to some good news for the agricultural sector.
Okay.
Exports through the Burgunj Customs Office have doubled compared to this time last year.
And it looks like processed soybean and sunflower oil exports to India are driving this surge.
Interesting.
This could be a promising sign for the growth of Nepal's agricultural processing industry.
Now on to an initiative that's facing some hurdles. The government's attempt to register all farmers in a central database.
Right.
It's moving at a snail's pace, with only about 2 million out of an estimated 4 million farmers registered so far.
The goal of this database is commendable. It aims to prevent fraud in subsidy programs and ensure that aid reaches the intended beneficiaries. But if the registration process remains inefficient, those benefits will be delayed.
So is it a tech issue, a trust issue, or something else entirely what's causing the bottleneck?
It's likely a combination of factors. Lack of access to technology in rural areas could be a significant barrier. There might also be bureaucratic hurdles or a lack in awareness about the program among farmers. It's something we'll need to keep an eye on.
Shifting gears now to politics and governance. Let's talk about the government just issued a 102-point cybersecurity advisory. It sounds pretty intense.
It does, but it also reflects the increasing awareness of cyber threats in Nepal. The advisory covers a wide range of issues, from protecting government data to securing critical infrastructure.
What I found interesting is that some of the advice is surprisingly relatable for everyday folks like us. Things like using strong passwords, being cautious on social media, and only downloading apps from trusted sources.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity isn't just a government concern. It's something we all need to be thinking about in this increasingly digital world.
Speaking of the digital world, remember President Trump's pause on USAID funding? It's actually having a real impact in Nepal, halting at least 4 projects in sectors like health, agriculture, and education.
It's important to clarify that not all U.S. aid to Nepal is impacted. The freeze mainly affects on-budget aid, which is channeled directly through the Nepali government.
Yep.
Other forms of aid, like the MCC, operate independently and remain unaffected.
So what does this freeze mean for Nepal in the long run?
Well, it's only temporary for 90 days.
Okay.
But it could be a sign of a shifting U.S. foreign policy landscape. Nepal would be wise to explore diversifying its development partnerships, strengthening internal resource mobilization, and being prepared to adapt to these changing geopolitical realities.
Now, for a story that sparked a lot of debate, a proposed bill to regulate social media, it includes some pretty strict measures like hefty fines and even jail time for certain offenses.
This bill reflects a global trend of governments grappling with how to regulate online content. It's a tricky balancing act. On one hand, curbing hate speech, misinformation, and cybercrime is crucial.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's the risk of censorship and stifling freedom of expression.
Some of the bill's provisions are particularly controversial, like penalties for spreading fake news.
Right.
Who gets to decide what constitutes fake news, and could this be used to target journalists or activists critical of the government?
Those are valid concerns. The bill definitely needs careful scrutiny to ensure it strikes the right balance between protecting individuals from harm and upholding fundamental freedoms. Transparency and accountability are essential in this process.
Let's move on to our final category for this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Social and cultural happenings. And we're starting with a positive development, a nationwide campaign to vaccinate over 1.6 million girls against HPV.
This is a significant step towards protecting the health of Nepali women. Cervical cancer is a serious issue, and this campaign demonstrates a proactive approach to public health.
Now, for a more somber topic, road accidents, Nepal sees an average of 75 accidents every day, many resulting in fatalities.
Oh, wow.
And here's a chilling detail. Motorcycles are involved in the vast majority of these crashes.
This points to a multifaceted issue: road infrastructure, driver behavior, vehicle safety standards, and enforcement of traffic laws all play a role.
Yeah.
While there are efforts to improve road safety, the sheer number of accidents suggests a lot more needs to be done.
We'll delve further into the remaining news stories in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Great! Welcome back to our deep dive into this week's news.
We've got plenty more to unpack, so let's jump right in.
Where do we go next?
Let's shift gears to a story that underscores Nepal's ongoing efforts in rhino conservation.
Okay.
Chitwan National Park has begun internally relocating rhinos to manage habitat and breeding.
That's incredible. I can only imagine the logistics involved in moving these massive creatures. Are they using any special equipment?
Actually, they're using elephants to help with the relocation.
Wow.
It's quite a sight to see. I imagine this initiative really highlights the dedication of conservationists in Nepal. Decades of effort have led to a significant increase in the rhino population.
So this relocation is all about ensuring a healthy and thriving rhino population for the future.
Precisely by distributing the rhinos more evenly throughout the park, they aim to create optimal conditions for breeding and minimize competition for resources.
That's a wonderful example of proactive conservation. Now, let's revisit a topic that's generating a lot of buzz: the proposed bill to regulate social media.
It seems like everyone has an opinion on this one.
It's certainly a hot-button issue. The bill touches on some fundamental questions about freedom of expression, privacy, and the role of technology in society.
Some argue that it's a necessary step to curb the spread of misinformation, hate speech, and online harassment. Others worry it could be used to silence dissent and limit critical voices.
It's important to examine the bill's provisions carefully. Some aspects, like requiring social media platforms to get government permission to operate, raise concerns about potential overreach and limitations on access to information.
And then there's the issue of penalties for spreading fake news. The term itself is so vague. Who gets to define what constitutes fake news? And couldn't this be misused to target individuals or groups who are critical of the government?
Those are valid concerns. The bill needs to be carefully scrutinized to ensure it strikes a balance between protecting individuals from online harms and upholding fundamental freedoms. Transparency and accountability in the implementation of these regulations will be absolutely crucial.
Another provision increases penalties for offenses committed using children or minors while protecting children online is paramount. This could inadvertently lead to silencing young people who are expressing themselves online.
That's a valid point. Any regulations on social media should be crafted in a way that doesn't disproportionately impact marginalized communities or limit the voices of those who are already vulnerable.
So what's the next step for this bill?
It's currently under review in Parliament and likely to undergo significant debate and potential amendments. This is where citizens can play a crucial role by engaging in the process, voicing their concerns, and holding their elected representatives accountable. They can help shape the future of Nepal's digital landscape.
Absolutely. It's a pivotal moment, and public participation is essential. Okay, let's circle back to Nepal's economy. We were discussing the challenges of fuel price hikes and the country's reliance on India as a single supplier.
Right, and it seems this economic interdependence is also impacting the government's initiative to register farmers in a central database. The slow progress of that effort might be linked to the lack of access to technology in many rural areas.
So it's not just about farmers being hesitant or bureaucratic hurdles, it's also about the digital divide.
Exactly. Without reliable internet access, computers, or even basic digital literacy skills, many farmers are essentially excluded from participating in this kind of program, no matter how well-intentioned it may be.
This really underscores the need for investment in digital infrastructure and bridging the digital divide. It's not just about connecting people, it's about empowering them to participate in the economy and access essential services.
I completely agree. Access to technology is increasingly crucial for development, and this is particularly true for the agricultural sector, which forms the backbone of Nepal's economy.
Speaking of technology and its implications, remember that 102-point cybersecurity advisory we discussed earlier? It turns out the government's focus on cybersecurity is partly driven by concerns about the security of critical infrastructure, including the power grid.
That makes perfect sense. A cyber attack on the power grid could have devastating consequences for the entire country. It could disrupt essential services, cripple businesses, and cause widespread chaos.
It's a sobering thought. We often think of cybersecurity as an abstract technical issue, but this highlights the very real impact it can have on our daily lives.
Absolutely. Strengthening cybersecurity is not just about protecting data, it's about safeguarding national security and ensuring the smooth functioning of society, investing in cybersecurity infrastructure, building capacity, and raising awareness about online threats should be top priorities for any government, especially in a rapidly digitizing world.
Let's end this segment on a more positive note. We talked earlier about the nationwide campaign to vaccinate young girls against HPV. It's truly heartwarming to see this kind of proactive approach to public health.
It is indeed. This campaign aims to reach over 1.6 million girls, protecting them from a potentially life-threatening disease. They're focusing on girls in grades 6 through 10, as well as those who are out of school. But between the ages of 10 and 14, vaccinations are being offered for free at schools and nearby vaccination centers, making access easy and convenient.
They've even enlisted actress Manisha Koirala as a goodwill ambassador for the campaign. Her involvement is sure to raise awareness and encourage participation, especially among young people.
It's a brilliant strategy. Having a well-respected public figure like Manisha Koirala championing this cause will undoubtedly make a significant impact.
Okay, that's a good place to pause. For now, we'll be back in just a moment to wrap up this week's deep dive into Nepali news. We're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into this week's Nepali news, ready to wrap things up.
Absolutely. We still have a few intriguing stories to cover.
Let's dive in. This next one really highlights the complexities of Nepal's cooperative sector. There are these inspiring success stories of cooperatives empowering communities. But then you also have these unsettling cases of financial mismanagement. It's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is indeed, and it seems the government is trying to address this dilemma with their response to the ongoing cooperative crisis. They've established a new regulatory authority, the National Cooperative Regulatory Authority, or NCRA for short. It's designed to have more teeth than the previous development board.
So they're shifting away from simply promoting cooperatives and taking a more hands-on approach with regulation.
Exactly. It suggests a recognition that while cooperatives play a vital role in Nepal's economy, they also require robust oversight to protect depositors and ensure overall financial stability.
So this new authority will be responsible for monitoring cooperatives, investigating potential fraud, and taking action against wrongdoers.
Precisely. It's a crucial step towards rebuilding trust in the cooperative sector, especially after those high-profile cases of embezzlement and financial irregularities we've seen in recent years.
But I'm reading that some cooperative operators aren't happy about this increased regulation. They're pushing back against some of the provisions in the ordinance that created the NCRA, particularly the limits on deposits.
Well, there's bound to be some tension, for many cooperatives represent a more accessible, community-based alternative to traditional banking strict regulations, while well-intentioned could stifle the growth of smaller cooperatives that are genuinely serving their communities.
It's a classic dilemma, trying to find that sweet spot between encouraging a thriving cooperative movement and safeguarding the entire financial system.
Ultimately, the goal should be to create a regulatory environment that encourages responsible financial practices, protects depositors like you, and fosters the growth of those cooperatives that are genuinely making a positive impact in their communities.
Speaking of navigating a complex landscape, the CPN, Unified Socialist, is holding a series of high-level meetings to discuss contemporary political events, the state of the party, and their strategies for the future.
It seems they're taking stock of their position in the ever-evolving political scene. It wouldn't be surprising if they discuss their stance on key issues, potential alliances, and strategies for upcoming elections.
Politics is a dynamic game, and these meetings could very well shape the party's direction and influence the broader political discourse in Nepal.
Absolutely. It will be interesting to see what decisions they make and how they position themselves for the future.
Shifting gears to a story that reminds us of Nepal's rich history, archaeologists are excavating Uku Mahal in Tarchula.
Oh, wow.
This historical site might have been a capital of the Kathiawar kingdom centuries ago.
That's fascinating. Are there any clues about what life was like back then?
Well, excavations are still underway, but they've already unearthed some pretty cool artifacts. Pottery fragments, intricate carvings, and even the remains of ancient structures. It's like peering into a window of the past.
It really highlights the importance of preserving and studying these historical sites. They hold so much knowledge and insight into Nepal's cultural heritage.
Absolutely. Speaking of cultural happenings, there's been quite a bit of controversy surrounding the Pathabara cable car project.
Yeah, protests and road blockades continue as tensions rise between those who see it as an economic boon and those concerned about its impact on the sacred site and the environment.
It's a tough situation. Development versus cultural and environmental preservation. It's a debate we see playing out all over the world.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. Finding a balance between progress and preserving Nepal's unique cultural and natural heritage is essential.
And lastly, let's talk about a group that's demanding better treatment. Nepali doctors are protesting over unfair stipends, unsafe workplaces, and labor exploitation.
It's concerning to hear that those on the front lines of healthcare are facing such challenges.
They've formed a group called the Safe Workplace for Health Workers Struggle Committee.
Powerful name.
They're calling for increased safety measures, fair compensation, and an end to exploitation. It's a reminder of the importance of valuing and supporting those who dedicate their lives to caring for others.
Absolutely. And this issue of doctor dissatisfaction can contribute to the brain drain we see in Nepal when skilled professionals seek better opportunities elsewhere. It can have a ripple effect on the entire healthcare system.
Well, that's a wrap on this week's deep dive into Nepali news. We covered a lot of ground, from the stock market to cybersecurity to ancient palaces and protesting doctors. Just shows how much is happening in Nepal and the diaspora. What story stood out to you this week?
It's hard to choose just one, but the Ukmahal excavation really captured my imagination, thinking about the history that's being uncovered and the stories those artifacts could tell. It's truly fascinating.
Absolutely. Don't forget to check out nepalidiaspora.net for the full articles, newsletter, and more episodes. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and maybe let's teach those algorithms a thing or two about Nepal.
Sounds like a plan.